Today is a really exciting day because we do it every single year, where we've been running now the Community Hive Collaborative Purchase. It's 15 years this year, which seems insane. But what happens is we do the Community Hive Collaborative Purchase. We bring in bees from Bill's Stag. I go out there every year and help him build the nukes out and help him pull queens and drop queens and graft queens so that we have high quality, fresh queens going into these nukes, coming out of the shoe swap, and then into the hot little hands of beekeepers here in Alberta. We have distribution in Calgary, Red Deer, and Edmonton. So we've been doing it for 15 years. And so we're so lucky that each year we invite typically our provincial apiculturalist, Sam, but we're lucky today to have Andrew on the call, our local inspector with enormous amount of experience, to help us kind of have a better bearings and understanding of any changes in the industry, good opportunity to really kind of dive in on what is expected for what's happening locally with integrated pest management and disease and just beehive management in general. And then also to have a really great opportunity to have a Q&A with someone that isn't me, that has their fingers into commercial beehives and industry hives, is a government employee, so they're here for the benefit of the livestock and the animals, and just making sure that, you know, our practices are exceptional as we move forward into our 2024 beekeeping season. So in the chat, if you can, go ahead and put in your answers to this. Hi, Jocelyn. Hi, Murray. How long have you been beekeeping? Now, this is not a question to judge your value as a human being on this earth who's choosing to participate with insects as a hobby weirdo that you are. It's more of a better understanding so that we can make sure that the questions that you might have are being met. So if you've never kept bees before, if you have, 15 years experience, it doesn't matter. We just kind of want to get a vibe check for that. And then, have you ever had an inspector come to your apiary? Andrew, I have a confession. I have never had my apiary inspected by an inspector, which feels so weird because I have had nukes inspected. I have had done workshops with Samantha Muirhead, our provincial apiculturalist. I've done projects with industry, but I've actually never had an inspector go through my beehives. And for some reason, it makes my palms sweaty thinking about it, even though I know it'd be like a friendly face coming to advise me and help me do a better job, or maybe look at things in a different way in order to ensure that I'm better at my husbandry skills than I'm currently doing. But for some reason, it freaks me out. I'm sure I'm not the only beekeeper who feels that way. So we've got Mark's a newbie. Jossie's got 10 years experience. And she also basically co-wrote all the bylaws for the city of Edmonton. So she's kind of a big deal. My girlfriend, hey girl. So Murray's second year, Pam 6 years, fourth generation farmer in poultry, but his first year with these little insect critters. Amy's first year. Ernest doesn't have bees yet, but he's starting soon. Ryan's got bees. Then we've got Mary's got bees for quite a while now. So we're kind of all over the map, but we do have a lot of beginners here today, which is awesome to see, because really, I just want everyone to have fun. But as we get going, I always like to start off by really thinking about what a beautiful place I get to keep bees in. We're so fortunate that we get to have bees here in Alberta, which is the traditional territories of the people of Treaty 7. And where I'm located here in Calgary, which includes the Blackfoot Confederacy, which is the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai First Nations, and the Tsuut'ina First Nation. They're beekeepers too at Tsuut'ina. Stoney Nakoda, which is Chiniki, Bearspaw, and Wesley First Nation. And then here in Calgary, we have Métis Nation Region 3. It's such a wonderful, beautiful place that, when you're alone in your yard, beekeeping, talking to your little bees, communing with nature, it's really nice to remember the peoples that maintained it and protected it for so long. So as we're moving forward, my name is Elise. If you didn't know, of course you already knew. I've been doing lots of programmings, but we're at almost 12,000 colonies from Bill that we've sold in Alberta since 2009, 10, 9. Yeah, it's crazy. So we've had lots of bees coming on. There's still nukes left. I was just bragging to Andrew how excited I am that we did not sell out of nukes this year. It's so funny. Bill and I have been on the phone like over the phone waves, high-fiving each other, which is probably not the expectation you would think for someone having decreased sales. Because the reason we haven't sold out of nukes, this is the first year ever we haven't, is because there's so much local bee stock for sale. There's so much local people producing queens. There's so much potential in this industry. And when I started with Bill way back in the day, you could not find a nuke for sale with a Canadian queen in it in Alberta. It was not possible. And when you brought it up to industry, when you brought it up to beekeepers, they say you can't produce queens here, you can't produce nukes here, the season's too short. Excuse for basically something that hadn't been trialed at a commercial level. Now, with the price of queens, the price of bees, the price of labor, the price of gas, and also a younger next generation community of beekeepers coming in and taking over operations, maybe a little bit more expansive thinking on behalf of the government and the commission, we see a really innovative industry really unfolding right at our feet. And so for me, as a person who's been kind of banging on the door for a while, doing things, beating my own drum, it's really exciting to see this convergence and real innovation happening in the industry of sustainability and self-sufficiency. So we do have nukes still for sale, but if you're buying bees from your neighbor, that is amazing. And if you're buying bees from someone that you've never bought bees from before, if you're usually buy from me, I totally applaud you, and I encourage you to collect those genetics and start breeding your own queens and making your own splits and all that jazz. So just so you know. So field days, if you've never been in a beehive or you're nervous about beekeeping, come to one of these. These are mostly selfie stick opportunities. So if you have friends or family in town and they want to go beekeeping for fun, they can come here. The Beekeeping 101, though, these are for people who are kind of first year beekeepers who are looking at skills on how do they super their colony, how do you split a colony, and how do you prepare a hive for harvesting honey. So these are really fun, quick little couple-hour workshops, but it is a really good opportunity for you to get some mentorship. But if you really want to dive deep, we have full day boot camps this summer. We're doing queen isolation and brood breaks with varroa mites right away here on June 8th. Then on the 22nd, we're going to be grafting queens and we're going to be making mating nukes. So if you're really interested in kind of getting your fingers into learning how grafting and queen starting happens, you can come to the bee yard. We have 16 colonies here in the city, and we're going to have, I think, 40 mating nukes kind of set up as a part of our pilot project here at an urban farm location. Bylaws all into it too, which is exciting. And so that'll be a really fun project to join in. And then the last one is late season splits. So that's happening late July. So you can really look at expanding your apiary when your colonies are the most robust. They can be in really good, healthy, robust order going into winter. So you don't have to buy nukes in the spring if you go into winter with more bees than you need. And also you can sell your bees in the spring if you come out of winter with more bees than you need. So again, looking at that self-sufficiency opportunity. Now, of course, Master Academy, if you're not a part of it, you should be. It's a monthly speaker series, online mentorship courses, webinars. It's the bomb. It's really amazing. If you want to know more about it, just let me know. We're learning all about kind of the deep questions about the beehive this year. So rebel laying workers, flight path selection, how bees choose that, division of labor genetically. We've done a lot of really cool stuff and we keep going. Nutrition is a big one this year that we're focusing on. And so if you really want to learn more about this stuff and stay with your finger on the pulse, join Master Academy with me. It's super fun. But today on the chat, go ahead and put all your questions there. I see Richard put a question there. This is awesome. We're going to get to it at the end of the talk today by Andrew. But then when Andrew's done presenting today, you can raise your hand and unmute yourself and ask your question yourself. So if you don't want me asking it for you because you want to put your own spin on it, or you just want to hear someone's voice other than mine, definitely unmute yourself and share your screen, even if you're, disheveled and in a dirty room full of laundry, which you can't see this side of my screen. There's a pile of laundry there. You can definitely join in. Okay, so Andrew is here, and I'm so excited that Andrew is here because he has got a lot of experience. So he's an apiary inspector with Alberta Agriculture and Irrigation, Plant and Bee Health Surveillance. So that's at Sam Muirhead's department. He's a third generation beekeeper. He went through the Fairview College program, the commercial beekeeping program. It's not there anymore, which is a real shame because it was an excellent program. He was owner of a successful 2,600 colony honey farm in Saskatchewan. But now he's definitely an inspector here in Alberta, which we're so lucky to have him. And he's really committed to the sustainability of beekeeping, which is why we need him in Alberta, because we do want to see this growing industry of self-sufficiency, queen production, nuke production, pollination, honey production, and export. This is what our industry, the backbone of it, and we need it to grow. So thank you so much, Andrew, for joining me today. Make sure you unmute yourself. There you are.
Hi, everyone. I'm Andrew. Thank you for the amazing introduction, Elise. Um, I really appreciate it. It was excellent. Um, yeah, I'm here to talk to you guys today about the do's and don'ts when it comes to some of the things that you're going to come across, specifically around the purchasing of nukes and splits. So I'm just going to share my screen here. And Elise, if you just want to let me know if when you guys can see it, perfect. Thank you so much. So as it says here, this is the stuff that's good to know. Things that are really good for people of all levels, even people who've run massive operations like I have. Stuff to be aware of when you're looking at purchasing items, as well as being aware of a little bit of some of the other um, resources that are available to you, and also a little bit of IPM, which is integrated pest management. So I'll bring up some things that you're going to be looking for some diseases in this talk as well. So uh, as stated already, I'm Andrew Nagy. I'm an apiary inspector for the government of Alberta, and I work with Sam Muirhead, who is our provincial apiculturist. Now it's going to fight with me. There we go. Um, some statistics for Alberta. We've got over 300,000 colonies in the province here, representing 40% of the colonies in Canada, give or take some. Depends on what time of year we look at, because sometimes we have some competitors in a few other provinces, but really it's a large percentage, and it's easily one of the largest in Canada for where the population of bees sits. $1 billion industry in Alberta, through the use of everything from seed pollination, pollination of the crops, honey production, wax sales, all the little bits and pieces in there. Propolis sales is now starting to become a recognizable number in that pie as well. And also we tie in with a bunch of other businesses. So we've got equipment sales and things along those lines that also really tie into the industry here in Alberta. That makes us kind of a central hub for Western Canada in many ways. We've got Bee Made here, in just outside of Edmonton in Stony Plain. Nope, not Stony Plains. Elise, I lost it. Stony
Spruce Meadows.
Spruce Meadows. Thank you. right beside there. And so it's it's been here for quite a long time, and there's only 2 plants for Bee Made, which is a place where you can sell your honey if you make enough of it, 5 barrels or more, I believe. So you've got a lot of access to a lot of opportunity in this province, and it's a very strong, growing industry. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Bee Acts. Primarily, what we do in my department is that we go out and we keep the regulations. So regulations we're primarily monitoring to make sure that diseases are kept in check, and we're here to help. It's not one of those things where we come out and go, oh, you're diseased, burn them all, get rid of them. That's not what we're here for. What we do is we'll come out, we'll do an inspection. And so just so that Elise isn't scared to invite me in a couple of weeks to come check out her bees, basically what will happen is myself or one of my colleagues will show up. We'll ask you a couple questions about your treatments. And that way we have a record so that we can look back and be like, okay, this is why this ended up coming to pass, more or less, or this is why your bees look excellent. And so we'll ask you a couple questions about the previous fall and the previous spring, just on treatments and stuff like that. If you did any, if you didn't, sometimes that's okay. Depends on what's been going on in your hives. And then we will go through your hives and take some samples, and we'll take them back to the lab and we'll get you information from the scientific side of things about how your bees are looking on a health scale. So we'll look at things like EFB and AFB scores. We'll be looking at the mites, the Varroa mites, and see what levels they're at, and show you how to check for those while we're in the field as well. And then what we'll also do is we'll also check for any other things. So if we see something, we'll let you know what it is. And then what we'll do is we'll either provide you with information verbally or through the multitudes of different accumulated knowledge papers that we've put together to help you take what's best for your operation and apply it to getting rid of those diseases so that you can keep working. And keep your bees alive. You know, the most important part, in my opinion. So one thing that I like to talk about right at the beginning, just for everybody to know, is that we do have an annual registration. It is part of the Bee Act that you are to register any bees that you have within the province of Alberta. And it's a straightforward form. We actually just released yesterday a digital form, so you can now answer it on your fill it all out on your phones and send it in instead of having to go find a computer and doing it the hard way. And basically what this is it's like, hey, this is my name, this is the company that I have. If you have a company name, mailing address, so that we know where you are, and where did you get your bees. And this ties in a little bit for traceability for us, for checking to see if if the person whom sold you those bees has had an inspection, so that you're not getting, so that the chances of you getting a diseased nuke or split that you're purchasing for your first year or your 10th year, make sure that that person has gone through the work to make sure that they are good and healthy and have the approval of the provincial apiculturist and her team. So Sam again. And there's other things to it too. You do have, it helps with trace outs, like I said. So if you call us and we come and look and there's a disease, we figure out who sold it to you and trace it back to where it needs to go so that we can help everybody in the province who got from that area. Helps us with statistics. We need to know, like, is there an extra 200 beekeepers that we don't know about in the province that we can help with providing that information and collecting it to help get more funding coming in, help with insurance, help with grants. You can't get some of these things without being registered through our site. And you'll have an opportunity to you'll see the site being visible there for us to show you links and stuff like that at the end here. It also gives you access to myself and to the rest of the bee team and to Sam. So what that looks like, again, we come out, we help you out with your bees. We're not going to do the work for you, but what we'll do is we'll come out and we'll inspect them, make sure that they're healthy, and then if there are any problems, we can help you get the medications, because now you need to have approvals from the team. Most of the time, a veterinarian will ask for it. Have you been inspected by the bee team? And then we'll give recommendations to that kind of stuff. If you're having trouble finding a vet who provides anything for diseases to help clear them out, we can help you with that as well. And then we also give you all that information so that you know what you're doing for next time and to help get yourself back on track. This beautiful person in the picture here, this is Olivia. She's in charge of our registration forms, and she's the one that you'll be talking to primarily. She manages all of the beekeepers who do registration in Alberta, and she always is tracking everything. One thing that you need to know, even if you don't have bees, if you have used equipment, you do need to register again so that we know if there's any equipment there. Plus, also, we come out and do an inspection before you sell, and that gives you the information to know, you and the person buying from you, the information of how good your equipment is, so that nothing gets spread around that could cause issues in that sale or after that sale. So it helps again with that traceability. It's important to note that this is all free. If you sign up with the Alberta government and register with us, it's all completely free. We will come out and help you at no cost. And so all of that information on the diseases and all of the lab work and everything that our team does and also whatever we send up to the National Bee Diagnostic Center in Beaver Lodge. We cover that cost for you. So yeah. One of the things that we do is interprovincial movement. So this is usually from BC to Alberta or Alberta to BC. Sometimes you see from other areas, like going to Manitoba or to Ontario. But generally, what happens is that if you're in BC and you're bringing bees across the border into Alberta, what's going to happen is you're going to get an inspection done by the BC government. They're going to take all the information, same job that I do. They're going to request a permit from Samantha and send that inspection form to her, CCing you into the email. And then once we approve it, we will send a permit to you saying, yes, you can move your bees back within this time frame. So it says conditions, like if you end up having a disease, let's say European foul brood, EFB, it'll be like, okay, if you're moving from this point to this point within this set of dates, we'll allow it to come across under the condition that you are now treating X, Y, and Z to correct the issue. If you're leaving from Alberta to go to any other province, again, generally BC, you'll call us to arrange an inspection, and we will send the team out, send the inspection report, and all of that information that's pertinent to BC, and Paul Van Westendorp, who's the provincial apiculturist in BC, will approve it and send a permit back to us saying, yes, same deal. Under these conditions, come on out under these dates. And that's kind of how we work. We take on all that responsibility to help you and apply for those permits so that you can have a reduced amount of paperwork on your end of things. And if you're laughing at any of my pictures, this is my family. This is my two brothers and my dad as we were finishing up a hard day of moving honey boxes around. So let's talk a little bit about some of the issues in the province and some interesting little bits of information that I'm going to bring up around certain things. So we're going to talk about varroa mites, which is easily one of the biggest pests that we as beekeepers are going to have. As it says in my slides here, it's the most devastating pest in the beekeeping industry currently. And it's really just because we're working around and we only have so many ways of handling the mite at the moment. Things that this mite will do is that it'll feed on larvae and adult bees. If you've taken any of Elisa's classes, I'm sure she goes over this in the pest management section. But generally what happens in the life cycle is that a mated female will go into the same cell as a young larva and will lay her own eggs. And in the course of the metamorphosis of that larva, after it's been capped over, turning into a bee, those mites will continuously be hatching and feeding off of its hemoglymph, which is its version of blood. And so that's how it spreads and harms bees at the beginning of their life cycle. But once they hatch out, they'll latch onto bees, like you can see here in my slide, onto the bees, and they will puncture the exoskeleton and again drink the hemoglymph from them and feed off of fat cells. And the biggest issue with this is that unlike humans who have several layers of skin that heal, an exoskeleton doesn't. And so this leaves two permanent holes in the bee's only line of defense against getting diseases and viruses, and that allows for viruses to get in. Plus, also the mite itself spreads viruses. And so these will cause things like deformed wing virus and several others that will stack up and cause devastation to your hive. It's not all doom and gloom, but I like to start with that just so that people know, if you're not taking care of this pest particularly, your colony will probably fail within 1 to 2 years due to the amount of mites that are in there. And so we look at thresholds, which is something that Elise and I were talking about earlier. So thresholds, the way that we measure it is that we have shaker cups, and I wish I brought some props to show you. But basically, it's a jar on two jars that are held together by a mesh screen. And what will happen is you'll collect approximately 300 bees, which is about a third of a cup, if I remember correctly. And you're going to shake it vigorously in a alcohol wash, or if you want to save a little bit of money and can't order ethanol or anything, you can use windshield washer fluid, um, something that I used for many, many years on the farm. It works just as well. And don't look at it as killing 300 bees, because what you're actually doing, uh, and this goes into a philosophy that you tend to adopt the longer that you're in it, is that you're actually just taking a vial of blood from your hive, to test it to make sure that it's got a good health check. And so what you're going to do is you're going to shake that vial vigorously for approximately a minute, minute and a half, and then you're going to let it drain. And what's going to happen is that the bees will stay on top because of that mesh screen, and the liquid and the mites are going to fall to the bottom, and you can get a good count. And I recommend doing 2 shakes on the same one to get a good solid count. Make sure that you dislodge those mites. Okay. And then if you see on 300 bees approximately, you don't have to sit down and count them. If you see 3 or more mites, generally that's when we would recommend treating, because that's at your 1% threshold, and that's in the spring. Now, in the fall, it used to be 3%, which would have been 9 mites on the same size, and it's been reduced now to 1 because of um, how high the mite population was over the last couple of years. So we've reduced it down to the same. If you see 3 or more mites in that shake, you're going to want to treat. And there's lots of literature about it, and you can always ask Elise. She's a pro at this, and she'll be able to point you in the right direction for the literature on how to treat with those properly. But yeah, so big thing about it is that bees are communal animals, and so they will go from their hive to other hives that are nearby and share food and talk to each other, and they will spread diseases and mites through that interaction. So just because you don't have it when you start doesn't mean that you're not going to get it, and you need to monitor continuously through the season. So you don't have to do it every week, but monitor once or twice in the springtime, monitor before and after any treatments. So, and then also you can monitor in the spring if you see anything that's causing an issue and you're not too sure what it is. So again, this is a graph. I made it really simple so everyone can see. We started off at a very low percentage. The average for across the province for everything that we had seen was looking at 0.5% infection rate of varroa mites. And by the summer, it was at 1.5. And by the fall, we were looking at 4.4%. And you know, that's the average of the province of just the hives that we got to look at. And we looked at about, I want to say we looked at about 7,000 hives last year, just the 4 of us. So quite a bit of inspections. We got to see a lot of people. And it's important to note that, you know, some of them are really high, some of them are going to be a lot lower or sitting at 0. And we also won't see all of them. But this is the averages of what we collected. And it explodes really quickly, because what I was saying before with the metamorphosis and the mites being laid, you're going to release between 7 and 9 on a worker. Every time a worker is hatching, if there's mites in there, you'll be releasing between 7 and 9 mites, depending on how long it's capped. And on drone brood, not saying to throw away drone brood all the time, but to throw away primarily frames that look the most like drone brood, and I'll show you pictures down the road here, you're looking at between 8 and 11 mites on average that are going to be coming out of that cell, because drones last a little longer in the cell. So important things to look at. And again, if you have questions at the end of this talk, I'll be open for them. And Elise is a wonderful contact, and she'll be able to help you with that stuff. It's not all doom and gloom. I just unfortunately have the job of talking about some of it. So American foul brood. This is a spore that forms bacteria which will eat up away um, at the larva. So this won't even let them get to a fully formed bee. They will liquefy, um, and the spores can live for years in equipment. So if you've ever heard of people talking about, burning a hive, the reasoning why is because um, spores can't handle certain amounts of heat under certain amounts of time. So there are ways to clean it. We have learned of these things, but it's a lot of work. But you want to get rid of your wax because the spores from this bacteria um, are going to stay in the wax for a long time, and they're very, very contagious. Um, it will kill your colony very, very quickly. I like using this example because it shows that my family and I are not infallible. Back in the 90s, when I was a little person, um, my grandfather ended up getting some AFB in some of his equipment through a farmer that was related to us. And from the fall, when we had about 1,300 hives, to spring, AFB wiped out and knocked us down to 12 total hives, which we had to burn uh, not long after. Because at the time, we didn't have the techniques that are available to us now, and we didn't know any better. So we burned, you know, I want to say it was something like 3,000 boxes and all the frames that go with it and all those dead hives, um, because of just letting a couple spores get in through a honey super and having bees visit with each other at the thing. And I don't say this to scare you. I actually say it because it's very important that take the lessons from people who have come before you, who have experienced this stuff. Listen to, ask questions of people like Elise and any other mentors that have experienced this, because they'll tell you there are ways to treat it now. We now know that we have antibiotics available to us, which won't solve the problem. It will handle the problem for a little while you do the stuff that needs to be done. Sometimes that's getting rid of frames, melting down the wax and scorching the frames so that you can put a new insert in, and a bunch of other things. But it won't solve your problem, and it gets quite expensive year after year to keep treating something that you could get rid of. And so with this one and with a bunch of other things, including mites, we tend to recommend rotating through all of your bad frames. So if you get a frame that has a hand's width, doesn't have to be my hand size, any hand size, a hand's width on both sides of your frame of drone brood, take that one out. If you want to be on top of it and be more like what myself and a lot of commercial guys were doing at the time and track what year your frame is, every 5 years you should be rotating out those frames and getting new ones in. That's the easiest and one of the cheaper ways to um, handle disease. And it doesn't matter if it's American foul brood, EFB, which is European foul brood, varroa mites, all those things. So you can rotate it through and keep healthy colonies going through. And one of the benefits to this is that if you've got brand new frame every year coming in, you take a 1-year-old frame and you can sell them in a nuke because it's still healthy frame. And just make sure that your people that are purchasing that you're purchasing from, or that are purchasing from you, if you're the one doing this, they know that they need to rotate every 5 years. Instead of buying it all in one big group, these make wax every single year. So just stick a couple frames into your honey supers. It's the best and easiest way to do it because they're going to do it anyway. And it also helps with swarm control, which is a different thing that I probably won't get into. I'll leave it up to Elise. A couple things. So yeah, sorry, I apologize. I got a little in the weeds there. So big things about American foul brood: it kills the larvae and the pupae. It will, in the picture here, you can see like you stick in a stick or a piece of grass, you mix it around on a larva that's not looking too healthy, very brown and kind of gooey, and it'll come out very ropey. And then you're pulling it out fairly slow. You're not going to like whip it out. It won't show it that way, but it has this ropiness. Another thing is that if the larva has sunk to the bottom, it might turn hard into a scale, which you'll see in my next in these set of pictures here. So you'll have sunken wax. I don't know if you can see my mouse, but in this top left picture, these little sunken pieces of wax that are covering the cells, it's not as poofy and healthy as you normally would see in worker brood. You can see it again in the lower half. There's also on the lower right, you've got a torn open cell on the bottom left and over on the bottom right here. That's the bees opening up because they smell something weird. So if you start seeing this kind of stuff, you're going to want to call probably us to come out and take a look and let us know that you're worried about it. You can see in that bottom right picture, there's a couple of cells with this yellow snot looking goop. That is the results of American foul brood on the larva. That's them liquefying. And so it's very unfortunate when it happens, but it is something that can be dealt with, especially if you can get to it quickly. So again, we'll move on to the next one, but there is lots of literature on how to work with this stuff. Now, there is an interesting thing happening in the industry at the moment. And so I'm going to talk about an AFB vaccine. And so we got a chance to talk to the group that's currently putting it together. And it comes with a warning. Vaccines are great if they can be done, but bees have a very quick turnaround. So if you have AFB in your history in your operation, you need to keep monitoring and inspecting those hives to make sure that it's okay and keep rotating through your frames. This says 10%. Generally, I aim for a third of my operation every year. And the reasoning why is because it just guarantees that you're going to hit that 5. Because if you take the bottom third of your worst frames, it doesn't necessarily mean you're getting all of your older frames out, and that's just part of the deal, basically. Hence why I was labeling, saying this was made in 2018 and this was made in 2017, so that 5 years later I knew they had to come out even if they looked good. The thing about the vaccine that makes it so that Samantha and the B team here, it's not that we recommend or don't recommend it. The big thing is that there's no field research on it, so we don't have enough information. We have a couple of small experiments that they've done that hasn't been double checked against, had someone else come in and test that stuff. And it's a fairly expensive endeavor to go down, because you need to have the injection. You can do it yourself. It comes in a bottle. You're going to be paying about, I believe it was $500 or $600 for a little vial that would 50 doses. And you have to make sure that you're being very careful with feeding it to the queen. And the problem is that once that queen passes on, you have to do it again. And so it's a very expensive endeavor. And I only bring it up to bring to light to everybody in the room who may or may not have heard of this, that this, while being there and sounds amazing, and I hope it will one day become something very fruitful, it doesn't have enough scientific research behind it. And the other thing is that if you're ordering the queens that have the vaccine in them, as you can see by my map, you're looking at 4 hours by plane and 36 hours by vehicle. And there's very, very different climates that they're being raised in. So go ahead, Elise.
So Master Academy this month on May 29th, I'm having Dalan present our webinar for Master Academy about the AFB vaccine, because it's a private agricultural company, pharmaceutical company that is veterinary science that's doing a lot of marketing, like millions of dollars of marketing. So we're going to have them present and find out more about what they're saying they're doing. And so it is going to be an interesting chat, because I've been doing a lot of research and I have a lot of interesting questions to ask. I don't think it's going to be as easy of a chat as she might be expecting in talking to a beekeeping club. But yeah,
totally.
I mean, and the vaccine's great. Like, it's nice to see innovation in beekeeping, but there is a lot of questions about field application for sure. So I'm really glad you brought that up.
Absolutely. And it's good that you're going to be going through and discussing with them. Because again, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I just, from my years of experience and from Samantha's years of experience and the rest of the B team, we don't want to have people jump up because it sounds amazing. And so do your research. Again, you don't have to take everything I say at face value. There's a million ways to do beekeeping. And I think that it's excellent that you're going to be leading a team and talking with them, with the class, because that's a very important thing to do is do your research, everybody. Again, I talk about the literature a lot. I've been doing beekeeping for 24 years professionally, which means that I worked for either my grandfather or for several other beekeepers that were third and fourth generation beekeepers over my lifetime, plus schooling and everything else. But I grew up in this. And the one thing that my grandfather did exceptionally well outside of building systems that could make it so he could work until he was 80, you know, um, was to remind us consistently, go ask the right questions and go and read the papers so that you can understand what's happening. So it's very, very important. And that's all that I'm saying is that when you're looking at it, don't jump up and be like, this is going to fix my problems. Because it's just a newer technology and we need more information. So EFB, this is a bacterial virus. It's not the same as American foul brood. European foul brood is actually it's just as contagious, but at one point in time when we didn't know the information that we know now, um, we thought it was just a different variety of the same disease. Now, here we are in 2024. We know and have known for a long time. This one's much more bacterial. It doesn't come from a spore, and it does different things to the gut of the larva compared to AFB. And basically, long story short, is that this will create scale. It doesn't look the same, as you can see by my pictures. They kind of dry out and get a little bit black, but they also tend to do similar things. So they get a little yellowy like coffee instead of like snot. They tend to curve around and up the cell a little bit more than AFB does, which sinks to the bottom. Um, and again, recommendation for a long time was to burn it, but we do have um, other resources available to us, other techniques that are available to us to handle this disease. And so there was an outbreak in 2020. It was quite a large one, and it hit a lot of areas in Alberta. And we had a few quarantines go up, and it was very serious for a while. So while we thought that this was a simple, easy fix, that if you treat for AFB, it solves the problem with EFB, it's not necessarily the case. So again, when you're in your hives, take a look at those cells, see what the larva looks like. That's one of the first things that I do. I don't even look for the queen most of the time. I find her by accident, because I'm busy looking at what does the brood look like. And I see eggs. If I can see eggs and larva, I know that there's a queen in there. And but what's the health of that larva? Because that's going to tell you a really like an unbelievable amount of information about how well your hive is doing. You know, look at the bees, how are they walking? Look at the wings, those kind of things. But the larva tells you if you have diseases more than anything. And again, this is another picture. So again, it looks fairly similar in many ways to American foul brood. But if you look closely, you'll see that they aren't quite liquefying the same. They kind of dry up and start to curl. And again, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm going to circle this one here on the right. It's uh, a little brown larva that's curling up and shrinking inside its cell. And these are very important things to be looking for. Again, this doesn't look like a super healthy hive to me. And it's a good example of what you're going to be seeing if you have an infected hive. And if you're not sure the difference between American foul brood and parasitic mite syndrome and EFB, that's okay. If you can recognize that these aren't healthy and you call, Elise or a mentor or us, preferably, so we can come out and do the tests, that'll help a lot. We'll be able to give you the information to help you work with that. The reason why everyone's here, sales, buying, and selling. So sales inspections is what we as the government do. We go out to the different companies, and we take a look at the hives and get an inspection and go, okay, do we see any diseases? Do we see any infections that are within the hives? Any large amount of mites? And can we give the seller that information and have them fix it in time to provide those viable nukes to you guys, the public, and the buyers? You know, um, it's not an absolute requirement, but we will come and call you if we find out you've been selling nukes to people, because we want to be able to make sure that we stop the disease spread at the front line. And so we call you, we come out, we take a look, and we're here to help. And I believe, Elise, you can jump in on this one. You got an inspection this year, I'm assuming, on your
Yeah,
nukes.
so that's one of the things that we provide with the cloud purchase is we do the inspection in BC, we get the permit, and then everyone who buys from us, we have the transport permit and the inspection. So you guys will all receive it, whoever buys bees from us. And then it all just comes through all together. And then the year we had the atypical foul brood outbreak in 2020, we actually worked with Sam and her team, and we were participated in like a spontaneous inspection kind of the nukes the day before distribution, just to kind of get an assessment of kind of what was going on in the industry, because it was kind of shocking. And so it wasn't so fearful that we were transporting EFB, but more or less trying to make sure that we weren't, because we didn't really know what the hell was going on. And it was lucky we didn't have any sort of sign at all, and we never did have some knock-on effects, which is great. But we're always working with both provincial bodies in BC and in Alberta to make sure that everyone's getting the best possible bees.
Excellent. And again, it's one of those things, like, we're here as allies to you. I know that some of some of the older beekeepers, my grandfather included, goes, ugh, government oversight. We're not here to oversee you. We're not here to tell you this is the best and this is the worst. We're just here to give you information and give you the tools to be the best beekeepers that you guys can be. And if there's a problem, we're here to support you. And so one of the things that we do again with these inspections is that we go and we talk to people like Elise, and we look at the bees, we make sure that they're good. And if you're not getting that inspection report, I would be asking questions whenever you're purchasing, because we do try and do tend to see all the sellers in the province before sale dates. So yeah. Yeah, this is now I've circled everything in this one for 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 what kind of diseases are in there. So when buying and selling, I'm going to talk primarily about when you guys are purchasing. You're going to want to look at what it is that you're purchasing. Are you purchasing a full hive, or are you purchasing a nuke? A full hive, again, is going to be your 9 to 10 frames. You're going to want to look at and see in both nukes and hives that full brood pattern that looks really nice with a couple of holes in it at most. Pardon me. And you're gonna want to see bees flying in and out of the nuke before they close it up and give it to you. Usually, depends on the way that they run it, but generally you're gonna want to see inside the hive, make sure that you've got the bees and that you've got some brood. And the seller will tell you, hey, I've got 2 frames of brood in here, or 3 frames of brood, depending on what the standards are for that company. And you're gonna want to, when you get home, you're gonna want to put them down, let them sit overnight, and then you can check them the next morning. And the reason why I say that is you want the bees to settle, because if you open them up right as soon as they get home after possibly a 2-hour drive, they're going to be quite agitated, and they're gonna be mad at you. And so we generally put them down. Like for myself, as an example, when I got new nukes or new hives, I would go drop them at night, and I would open up the door for them in the morning, and then come check them in the afternoon after they've had roughly 24 hours to hang out and get used to their new surroundings. Um, Now, again, I don't know about Elise, but I know that there are some sellers that tend to mark their queen. So our queen here on the right-hand side, that's that longer, gorgeous looking creature in the middle there. Sometimes they'll have a red or a blue or a white or a green dot, depending on the year, because we tend to some breeders tend to mark their queens. And that'll tell you what year and how old they are because we have a 5-year cycle on colors. Sometimes you don't have that. It's totally okay, and you can ask your buyer, or sorry, you can ask your seller if they've marked the queens or not, and they'll let you know. But one of the things is that you'll get used to finding a queen um, without that color help in no time. It doesn't take more than a season or two generally to get pretty decent at finding them. Um, and you're gonna want to take a look at her if you find her. How's her wings look? How do her legs look? Or does she seem to be moving reasonably well? Because she's going to be the marker of the health in that hive going forward. And so, just a couple things like that. Sometimes you get a seller who will box the queen for you. That's generally if they're going on a really long drive, like you're looking at 8+ hours. If you let the buyer know, depends on the company as well. So, um, other things you're going to be wanting to look at the frames. You're going to want approximately on a 9 to 10 frame box. You're going to be looking at 7+ frames of bees, and probably you're going to be looking at 3 to 5 frames of brood. Which again, they might not open it up for you right when you're there, depending on what's going on due to how many are being picked up and dropped off that day. But Nuke's generally going to be looking to 2 to 3 frames of brood and about that box being relatively full. And the reason for that is that you're going to want to have a nice strong hive. When you get home, if you've got a good nuke, you're going to want to, when it's boiling over and having a bunch of bees filling up that box, you're going to want to be able to move it into a bigger box fairly soon. Especially when you're paying, I believe the average is between 350 and 450 for a nuke nowadays, which is quite an investment, especially when you look at the purchase of equipment, which I believe last time I checked was close to 1,200. It's probably more than that now. So you're putting in quite an investment. You're going to want to make sure that you're getting a good population of bees and brood. Is there anything that you want me to touch on a little bit more, Elise, or talk about transportation or anything?
No, I think this is a great place for us to jump in with some questions. I have
Perfect.
a
Let's
few
do that.
right off the bat. If I
Hey,
call you to come and inspect and you come and do inspections, then you do some sampling and some testing, do I have to pay you anything?
no, it's completely free. We
Oh,
will we will book you in, and we'll try and get to you as quickly as possible, depending on where we are in our season. Generally, we say if you can give us at least 2 weeks or 1 to 2 weeks of advance notice, we'll find a way to get you in. Because generally we're traveling all across the province, so we'll just make sure that when we're in your region, we'll come see you.
perfect. And just
And
before Richard's jumping off here, he had a quick question.
hey,
Richard, you had a question and didn't you? Before you run off? Oh, unmute yourself. Wait, you're muted, bud.
Right. Okay. Yeah, thank you, Andrew. Great presentation. I'm really impressed with that and the pictures that I took. I was questioning about, I just noticed the insurance and it was connected to the same organization. And I was just looking at, I just registered at the beginning of this week
okay,
and go back in there and apply for the insurance. I'm thinking that's probably a good thing to do, especially
yep.
as a newbie. Um, And it looks like it's got a time frame. So then, like in January, do you do it again for next year in 2025, or do you do it? Is it a May?
So are you asking about the insurance time frame, or you're asking about registration with us?
The well, the insurance is the first question.
Okay.
Because it was my first question. And I had to register before the bees, but I heard you say it should have been the first week of May, and I just did it on Monday or Tuesday this week.
No,
So
that's that's perfectly okay. Registering with us, you can do it anytime. I believe it starts May 1st and goes forward between May 1st and I believe we have quote unquote we close registration July 1st, because
okay,
that's when the new year starts for us. Now, if you're late for registration, that's perfectly okay. You just have to let us know and we'll get you the registration permit in there. So that's for our side of things. For insurance, generally what happens is that they'll come out, they'll inspect your hives, see how strong they are at different times of the year, and then if again this isn't something that I work with directly, But generally what happens is that if you have a loss or you don't produce enough of your average honey yield, that insurance helps bump up what you make or help you replace your hives, depending on what kind of insurance you're getting.
Is there different kinds of insurance? Because to me, it sounded like it was insurance in case my neighbor got stung and tries to blame me. That's like
Can I
Oh,
interrupt?
yeah,
yeah,
that's
go ahead. Go ahead.
This
I
is
know what's
not
going on here.
liability insurance, Richard. So if you want liability insurance, join the Edmonton or Calgary and District Beekeeping Club. They have group insurance for liability for homeowners. Just so all of you know, if you live residentially, your property insurance may not cover livestock. And bees may not be included, especially in an urban environment. So you would need supplementary insurance for liability, and you can get that through the clubs. If not through that, contact Crossfield Agencies. I've worked with them for over a decade. They know more about bees than they should. Crossfield Agencies, I'll put it in the chat. I grew up in Crossfield, so the woman who owns the insurance company is a high school friend of mine. So we've had lots
okay.
of wine talking about this industry. She can create custom insurance and stuff like that, but really the group insurance for small production is really great.
Yeah. Perfect. Thanks, Elise.
Agents
Yeah.
got too fancy a suit and too expensive as shoes now. So I'm concerned about what the premiums are really going for. But anyway,
Well, the group insurance is much better because the premiums are shared.
okay.
Because everyone's smaller. If you're going to go independent, like a small farm or whatever, like me, it's not cheap. But if you're looking for the actual crop insurance, I think you have to have 100 hives in order to even
Oh.
get into it. Anyways, the insurance that Andrew's talking about.
Yeah,
That's
sorry.
not
My apologies.
No, that's okay. It's important that everyone knows because sometimes people are thinking like, hey, this is fun. I'd rather do this than whatever my day job is. Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
Richard.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
I gotta
Richard.
go. Sorry.
Thanks. No, thank you, Richard. Okay, so I've got a couple questions that were emailed in advance, and then we've got a question here from Pam. So one of the people added pollen patties in the spring, and then she went into the pollen hive, and the pollen patty was covered in mold and mildew. She clearly had a moisture issue, and she's like, is that poisonous to the bees? Would that cause damage to the bees? They're alive now. She's worried about dysentery or anything like that.
So it's an interesting topic, and a lot of the literature that I read is they can handle a little bit of in their stomachs. They are not made of glass. They aren't that fragile. So I wouldn't worry too much about dysentery at this point in time. I'm assuming this was a few weeks ago that this happened. If you haven't seen any yet, you're probably okay. Yes, moisture is a problem, but it's mostly a problem because when the food is completely taken over by mold, it's not good for them, and they will just ignore it. And they'll try and remove it from their hive if they can. But generally, if it starts to mold, look at the way that you stored things and go from there. Basically, it also another thing that's important with pollen patties is check to make sure they're actually taking the pollen patty, because sometimes they have a better food source nearby that they'll ignore that pollen patty and go after that instead. So
I've seen that too. Okay, and then in the same thing of creepy, gross things in beehives, what do you do with dead out equipment from mice? So you have mice in your bees over the winter, and in the spring you've got honey still in there, but there's like a mouse nest in the bottom board. Do you throw it all out and burn it? Do you clean it? Like, what do you recommend?
well, first things first, put on a mask. Okay. Not that all mice have this, but hantavirus is a real thing and is very scary. Not good numbers out of that. So always put on a mask when you're working with it. And you can clean actually the mice nests. You can get those taken care of. It'll leave a big ugly hole in your frame for a little while. But if you want to use that honey up, usually it's okay to do so. For dead outs, you want to be careful with dead outs a little bit more. And the reason why I bring this up is that dead outs we always go, oh, look, there's food and there's stuff inside this thing. This hive didn't make it through winter. and we take it and we stick it into another hive. If that was a diseased hive, you've now just spread that disease to your next hive. And that's why I say be very careful. So what you want to do is you want to look at it and see, okay, well, why did these bees die? If you can be a forensic scientist, you can be from CSI, and you can look at that hive and be like, okay, there's a bunch of frozen bees right here. It's a small cluster, and they were 3 inches from food. Well, they were too small and they froze to death, and they didn't have the energy to move over in the winter. That's a fairly common thing that we see. We see chilled bees. But if you see no bees in there, that's a bigger warning sign than anything. That means that there was probably something in there that drove them out. Usually a disease like American foul brood or EFB or something along those lines. And you're gonna want to really look at that. And if you don't know, if you're not sure about what you're seeing, that's again another reason to call us out to come and take a look at your hive, because we've got, I think combined we've got over 50 some odd years of experience amongst all of us. Actually, probably closer to 60. I keep forgetting how long I've been doing this. and, uh, and and we can help you learn to identify what you're looking at, so that's the dead out's a little bit more of a do it with caution, even if there's perfectly good feed in there.
Perfect. Okay, so Pam's on here, and I think it's Pam Van Ploot, it doesn't say, but if it is, they're down in the Crow's Nest Pass. And
Okay.
so not a typical place that has a large operations potentially in that area. Do you have a schedule where you would be in the province at any given time, or do they just like book it now and then you guys notify, like we will have a team, in Pincher kind of area? Yeah.
Generally what happens, so as it was with us discussing on how to get today going, if you reach out to us, what'll happen is we'll look at our schedule and we'll be like, okay, you know what? We've got 4 or 5 people that are south of Calgary. And we'll go down to Crow's Nest Pass and we'll go, okay, we're going to do Lethbridge and we're going to go and do somewhere south of there, closer to the border, and then we'll swing up and we'll grab here. So we kind of we take it as they come. And so it's going to be one of those things where if you message us, we'll find out a way to get to you fairly quickly. And it doesn't matter how big you are. If you've got one hive and you want us to come take a look, we will do our best to get there. So but it is just call, let us know, and we'll figure it out on our end.
It's so exciting because culturally a decade ago, this was not an option. I can tell you that. And so it's really exciting to see the government and your agency really taking husbandry on all levels seriously.
Absolutely. And part of the reason why is because again, so I'm going to prop up Samantha a little bit because she's awesome and amazing, and she's also not here, so she doesn't have to hear me talk awesome about her. But at the end of the day, Sam and the team, so Sam and Allie and the people who came before
Olivia.
me and also Olivia especially, they really took on a lot more than what they think they were taking on, and also a lot more than previous apiculture groups for the government have done. And they really, like Olivia, the registration program is her pride and joy. She has rocked this thing for, I'm thinking like it's got to be 8 or more years at this point in time. And she built it from scratch.
When she started, you would get paperwork sent to you in triplicate. You would keep the yellow copy and send the pink and white back in by mail. And you could only pay for your registration by check or money order. And if you wanted to, you could fax it in. Like this, and this was like, we're talking 6 years ago. It's so funny. It's and so she's definitely brought the agency with very little funding in out of the dark ages.
Absolutely. And we are a very small group. Again, this is the largest we've been in a very long, I think ever. And we've got 7 people on the team. So it's not very big, and we cover the whole province. So Olivia covers all the registrations by herself. If we have time, we'll come and give her a hand, but she pretty much does it alone. Sam's taking care of both high level and low level issues within the province and making decisions on those things and how to best protect the industry and the individuals. And then, Ali, myself, Anton, and Kayla this year, we cover the whole province. We drive, like, perfect example. On Monday, I'm going south with Anton, and Ali and Kayla are going up north, and we split up and we go and tackle these inspections and the sales inspections and interprovincial movements and all these other things for you guys. And we do it on a very small budget with a lot of travel.
That's true. So, okay, so Ryan says we're getting a couple nukes this year. In 2022, they lost both of their hives in the fall. They're thinking it might have been the dearth, but could they sign up for someone to come and inspect their equipment before the hives arriving in June? They live in Calgary.
Yeah, actually, it's a good thing you brought that up. So if you contact us, and I'll zip to the end and give you my contact information. Generally, we recommend you message b@gov.ca, I believe it is. It might be .ab.ca. It's all in the back of this
B
one.
dot. What is it? AB dot. No dot. ab.gov.ca.
I'll zip back here for you guys. There it is. b@gov.ab.ca.
Yeah.
And that phone number. Yeah. And that phone number. I'll leave this up for you guys to look at. This is my stepdaughter when she was a lot younger. She's 17 now. And I don't have hair anymore. So, it's been a couple years. But this was her. She found the queen faster than I did in that observation hive behind us. Yeah, so if you message
Awesome.
b@gov.ab.ca, or give that 780 number a call, that's the best way to do it. Don't message me directly. I know my email's in there. That's for if you guys have like a 1 or 2 second response. Ask Elise. Sometimes I don't get to it very quickly because I'm out in the field a lot of the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I'm happy to be the funnel in between because I'm very comfortable saying, I don't know, contact someone who, like if I don't know. So for instance, Candy here says she was cleaning her hives to prep for the nukes coming, and one of the hives was full of dead bees at the bottom, about a dozen wasp bodies, and lots of stuff in between the frames that look like spider webs. No spiders. So Candy, right away, I'm going, it's not spider webs, it's wax moth. How long ago
100%.
did you use this bee equipment?
Yeah.
Number 2, I'm saying if there's wasp bodies, it means the colony was robbed in the fall when the wasps were still around. So 3, I'm wondering if you had bad varroa mites, the colony was crashing in the fall and the bees were robbed. What do you say, Andrew?
I think those are the best. Like, again, looking at the information provided, I think that is a very accurate thing. The only thing that I would say is that, without seeing the frames, it could be any number of things for the end. It's not necessarily a varroa mite, but that is probably the most likely.
The colony crashed in the fall before winter even came if there's wasp bodies inside. So look at the comb, look for that scale. You can you can bug the apicultural department, but you can also send samples on your own accord to the National Bee Diagnostic Center. Like, we need
100%.
to use that facility. It's up at Grand Prairie Regional College or whatever polytechnic they're called now. But they have, and for you to get a sample sent up there for them to test for scale and things like that, I think it's like $40. It's like not a big deal, and you can mail it up there.
I'm actually going to jump in as well. There is another tool that I was going to get to, and I jumped past it. So first off, alberta.ca/bees and apiculture. This, you can find a lot of information on diseases and a lot of, we also post scientific papers that are worth time and other informational pieces that you can use. But more importantly, from this website, you can also get our bee health app, which is awesome because guess who runs it? We do. You'll actually be probably talking to Olivia and I, to be absolutely honest, because we generally run this. So what'll happen is that you can go in there and it'll give you information, all the same information that you can get from our website, plus a little bit more with pictures and everything to be like, this is American foul brood. This is what this is what parasitic mite looks like. And there's a questionnaire in there. It's like, what's wrong with the hive? Well, my bee population's down and this, and I see this and this and this. And it'll come back with well, you said these things. These are the possibilities it could be. And at the end of it, if you want to put in a report and submit it to us, we get that back and we can look at whatever pictures you take on that app and send to us, or any videos, and we can look at it and be like, you know what? This is probably this. Either we can come out and look at it, or we can provide you information, and this is how you can work through it. And this is an amazing app. We spent, well, I say we. I have only been helping for about 2 years on it. Olivia and Sam and Ali have been spent probably, I want to say, 5 to 7 years on this
Yeah, it came
one
out right
product.
before COVID. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like 2018, 2019. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's gone through quite a few things. We've been doing a lot of tests. It's now available on both Android and Apple, and it's free.
Yeah.
Okay. This is, again, for everything that we do in the government, generally, we're trying to do it for you guys for free, because we don't want you to have to pay for this stuff. And we want you to have all the ability to grow as big or as small as you want to be. And so it's a very good resource that I highly recommend. Because it's if you can't get a hold of somebody on the phone, let's say Elise probably helps what, 50,000 people, 100,000. What are we looking at, Elise?
Well, I always joke that if you call me, start your conversation with your name. Don't just assume that I know who you are, where you're located, and then have your 5 inspection questions answered. You may not know what that is, Andrew, but that's, are you queen right? What's the brood pattern look like? Is there sign of queen replacement? Is the colony been increasing or decreasing in size? And is there sign of brood disease? If you don't have the answers to those 5 questions, do not call me. I will tell you to go back and check and answer those questions. After that, I can answer your question on the phone, but that's basically what the questionnaire is going to be asking you, is basically the questions that you need to preemptively know about your colony. You see bees on the landing board and you're like, there's a lot there. Are my bees going to swarm? I'm going to ask you, well, are you queen right? What does the brood pattern look like? Is there sign of queen replacement? So you got to open your hives to know.
And we'll do the same thing. So if you call us, again, if you don't get us on the phone number or in an email, we will get back to you. And we get back to you fairly quickly, because Olivia, again, amongst one of her many very busy jobs, she manages the phones for us when we're not in the office. And so we will get back to you. What'll happen is she'll assign us to call you back, and you'll get to talk to us, and we'll ask you the same type of questions. We might go a little bit more in depth if we hear an answer that you're like, ooh, let's ask more about this, which I imagine is the same thing with Elise. But this app is a good starting point so that you're ready for when we come in with those questions.
Yeah. Awesome. Ernie says that he took the course with the apicultural department. It's actually with the Alberta Beekeepers Commission, the extension service. Renata's first job back postpartum, post-mat leave. She ran a viruses and pathogens workshop, and Ernie, you loved it. Yeah.
Yep.
So that
was a couple days. That was last week, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. You could have seen me. I was on site that day. I was staring at a computer screen, but
yeah. There you go. Well, I just want to thank you so much, Andrew, for your time, because really this program that you are running and you're a part of is huge and super important to the sustainability of our industry, and really important to continuing, I guess, as we have these budgeting beekeepers or beekeepers that are growing in experience, but maybe not in volume of bees, is that we all feel like that on our journey or our learning curve of beekeeping, that there are industry and supports so that we can continue to make sure that everyone is keeping bees that are healthy, thriving, and not a nuisance to the industry, right? That's the goal.
Absolutely. And
Well,
thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, and
you
thank
guys
you
are
everyone who attended.
Yeah, thank you everyone who attended. Just so you know, you're in great hands with Elise. I've known this is our first time talking, but as we were saying before the meeting started, like, I've known about Elise probably since 2011, I would say. So you were 2 years into selling hives at that time.
Yeah.
Or selling nukes at that time. So that was quite a long time ago. And
yeah.
I've never heard anything bad about her courses. In fact, I have some friends that helped her with her video courses.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's nice to hear. Usually
awesome.
People are like, I like you now that I've met you. I've heard terrible things. No, I'm just joking.
Well,
okay,
It's what it is.
We'll
Perfect.
see
Thank
you
you.
this summer, Andrew, and the rest of you guys. I'll see you if you're getting bees from me at Bee Distribution. Don't forget to remind me of your name when I see you, because I get brain fog for the hundreds of people and their families that approach me with a piece of paper being like, I'm here for my babies. But I'm so looking forward to it. Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful Friday night and enjoy the weather this weekend. And we'll talk soon. Thank you, Andrew. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.